So this is chapter 5, the monastery as a teacher, lay people and the Vihara. So this is Luang Por Sumedho speaking in the early days in London, giving advice to the local lay community. I would like to suggest that people coming here should, on occasions, bring candles, incense and flowers as an offering. This is a good tradition. To make an offering is part of our devotional practice as Buddhists, as an act of worship, of gratitude, of love towards the teacher, the Buddha. The Buddha is the one who knows, the wise one within us. But that's also just a conceptualization. To use our bodies within conventions, in a harmonious and graceful way, inclining towards generosity, is in itself an act of giving. Is your attitude, I come to the Vihara to get something, or I come to the Vihara to give, to actually physically give something? Bowing is another tradition. Learn how to bow mindfully, putting your head down, surrendering physically, giving yourself in the act of bowing, instead of just saying, I'm not aggressive, I'm not proud and arrogant. Don't become proud because you bow so well, or start hating people who do not bow. This is an act of devotion, and devotion is an opening of the heart, of the emotions rather than the intellect. You can try to figure out how much you gain from bowing, its advantages and disadvantages, whether it's the real Dhamma, and whether it's necessary or unnecessary, but any opinion and view that you have about it are just another opinion and view. Bowing is something that is done or not done, giving or not giving. But heedlessness is always rationalization, wanting to criticize, analyze, or find reasons for doing or not doing something. If we live our lives in wisdom, then we do or don't do. With awareness, we know what to do. The generous, the beautiful, the kind, the spontaneous. Good actions are done through clear awareness, through a seeing and understanding of time and place. Or there's an awareness of wrong impulses, selfish impulses. These we do not act upon. Chanting, what is this? Is it something valuable or is it useless? Do you doubt whether to do it or not do it? Do you have to find reasons and justifications? Do you have to be convinced one way or the other? Or do you take a stand saying, I'm not going to do it, or I'm going to do it? Some people say, chanting reminds me of Roman Catholic blind devotion and rituals, rites and ceremonies. This is taking a stand. Can you mindfully participate in a ceremony, or are you going to reject it because you take a stand against ceremonies? Can you give yourself completely to a tradition, or do you say, I'll only go so far with it and then stop? What about monastic life? Can you give yourself fully to the monastic life, or will you have reservations? I'll go so far, then, I don't know. In meditation, I'll go so far, then maybe I want life on my own terms, and always with the bridges there so I can run back across them if I don't like what's ahead of me. This is, of course, samsara, heedless wandering on. The practice of awareness always means the present moment, complete involvement, complete surrender, acceptance, and that is liberation. With doubt, rationalizations, justifications and reservations, there's always a myriad of complexities which pull us this way and that, and confuse us. So this is just a short piece, and in the early days when they were in London, back in 77, 78, then many of the people who were regulars at the Hampstead Vihara were not so familiar with the traditional forms, bowing, chanting, and so forth. These were sort of not familiar, and that people were more acquainted with Buddhism, particularly as meditation practice. And so when Luang Por Sumedho and the others arrived in 77, then this was all something quite new to them. George Sharp was saying that until he'd met Ajahn Amaro in 1976, that was the first monk he'd ever met. So they really didn't have many of the people who were involved that much in direct connection with the tradition. So this comes from that era of Luang Por introducing these particular aspects of practice, and also what he was entering into in the field of Buddhist practice in the West at that time. There was this a sort of strong sense of, well, we just want the essence, we want the really important stuff, we don't want any kind of religious nonsense, we just want the pure essential teachings. And so many are drawn towards Buddhism as a reaction against Christianity or Judaism, or having inherited particular religious forms and having that pressed upon them by their parents or their societies. And so there was that sense of not wanting to or being resistant to the idea of bowing or chanting or joining in with rituals or customs or forms that you didn't have a particular understanding for. And so in the early years there was a lot of this kind of say introductory this way of introducing people to these practices and how to work with them. And right here he's also bringing in the basic style that you find over and over again in his teachings of, well, it's not so much a matter of whether you do it or you don't do it. Well, what's your attitude towards it? What's your mind doing? If your mind is saying, I'm not going to bow, well, who do they think I am? Then, oh, that's interesting. let's look at that. Or yes, we should bow, and that person over there isn't bowing properly, and they're doing it all wrong, or they're arrogant and stupid. They're not humble and good like me, and that kind of self-righteous attitude. So that will this is one of the things that he's pointing to. It's not a matter of so much of whether you do bow or you don't bow, whether you join in with the chanting or you don't, but to watch what the mind is making out of any of those particular aspects. And the theme, or one of the themes of the forest tradition teachings, even though it is quite orthodox and observant of many of their ancient customs and rituals, there's always that sense of not wanting to just follow things because it is a custom, or just because it's the traditional way of doing things, but more to be bringing that reflective mind and the inquisitive mind to that, and not being attached to the forms as an end in themselves, or something that is intrinsically good or purifying or noble. So I'll go on and read the second one, and then we can have time for discussion. So the second one is chapter 6. Again, the monastery as a teacher, and this is on Anagarika training. And this was when Luang Por was giving the 8 precepts to someone going forth as an Anagarika one day. I think this was given in the Chithurst era, so this was a couple of years after that previous talk. Anagarika means one who is leaving the home life for the homeless life. It implies relinquishment and renunciation, as the homeless life is the life of the religious seeker, dedicated solely to realizing the truth. Renunciants are those who can take on the precepts that limit and contain their energies, so they don't find themselves being pulled out this way and that, and can concentrate their minds on the truth, which we call inclining to Nibbana, the unconditioned. The traditional opening salutation in Pali is Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sama Sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble and perfectly enlightened one, to the Buddha. This is a way of reminding ourselves to be with that which is perfect, the purified, the truly compassionate, the enlightened. Then we take the 3 refuges, in the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha. First we take refuge in the Buddha, Buddhaṃ Saranang Gacchāmi. Now what does this really mean? Recollect that a refuge is a place that you go to for safety, and that refuge with the Buddha means refuge in wisdom. This points to something very real, not something idealistic or far or remote, but that which is wise within us, that which is wise in the universe, awake and clear. So taking refuge in the Buddha is not just an empty recitation, but a way to recollect, because we forget and are caught up in our feelings and thoughts. The second refuge is Dhammang Saranang Gacchāmi. Dhamma is the Pali word for the ultimate reality, that which is ultimately true. So we take refuge in the immortal truth, reminding ourselves to be with that which is true. Then Sanghang Saranang Gacchāmi, taking refuge in the Sangha, the virtuous ones, those who live by a code of nobility and virtue. This can be seen as the Bhikkhu Sangha, the order of monks, but it really means that you are taking refuge in a community, or with all human beings who are virtuous. Or you can look at it as taking refuge in that in yourself which is virtuous, compassionate and good, and in practical ways of relating, and living as a human being in that spirit. Our way of relating to each other is through kindness, compassion and morality, rather than through exploitation and selfishness. Hence you remind yourself to take refuge in Sangha. As a renunciant Anagarika, you take the 8 precepts. The first one is Panatipata Viratmani, to refrain from intentionally taking the life of any living creature. You have to learn to respect the lives of living creatures, rather than just getting rid of them for your own convenience. You must be more considerate of even the most insignificant form of life, no matter how unpleasant it might be. Panatipata makes us more patient, more respectful towards the rights of all creatures on this earth. We no longer look at this earth as something to be made as we want it to be, so that it's convenient for us at the expense of all other living creatures. Adinadana Viratmani is the precept of refraining from taking things that do not belong to us, so that we train ourselves to respect that which belongs to others. The third precept is Abrahmacharya Viratmani, celibacy. This means total abstinence from any kind of intentional sexual behavior. It's the way of a brahmacharian, in which we relinquish sexual delight for the religious quest. In other words, we take the energy given out in sexuality up into the heart, the spiritual center. The fourth precept is Musavada Viratmani, which means refraining from lying and being more responsible for what you say, not using language to insult others, for exaggeration or for gossip. The fifth precept is Sura Miraya Majapamadatana Viratmani, refraining from alcoholic drink and drugs. Anagarikas refrain from intentionally altering consciousness, recognizing the way of mindfulness as one in which you open your minds to understand conditions, rather than trying to get away from them by manipulating your minds. The sixth precept is a renunciant one of refraining from eating at inappropriate times, so we don't go spending the whole day indulging in eating food. An Anagarika and Bhikkhu may only eat between dawn and noon. Here we usually eat the one meal just before noon. In the winter when it's colder we have rice gruel in the early morning. See, these were the old days. In the winter, when it's colder, we have rice gruel in the early morning. But the idea is to just eat what is necessary rather than spending our time preparing and eating food. In ordinary life one tends to munch on things all day long, at least I did. But here we limit our habits rather than just following them. The seventh precept, Nacha Gita Vadita Visukadasana Malaganda Vilepana Dharana Mandana Vibhusanatana, means you no longer seek distraction through entertainment. You abstain if you become bored or want some fun. You want to go to the movies, the discos and so forth. However, this doesn't mean that we're against fun and entertainment, but that we simplify our lives rather than seeking distraction through the sensual world. If we feel bored or weary now, we move inward, towards the peace within. Actually, you begin to realize that true peace of mind is much more delightful than any kind of sensual pleasure. And after a while, the sense pleasures begin to seem less enticing, as you start to recognize the strength within yourself. The last precept, Uchasayana Mahasayana Viratmani, is about sleeping. It's usually translated as not sleeping on high and luxurious beds, but can be regarded more as not seeking escape through sleeping all the time. There's a side of us which, when life becomes difficult, wants to sleep all the time, eradicate ourselves through sleeping 14 hours a day, and of course that's possible if you have high luxurious beds. But in the monastic life we train ourselves to sleep on harder surfaces, which are not the kind of places where you can spend hours lost in sleep. So you begin to develop your meditation and learn to limit sleep to just what is necessary for the body, and you know how much is an indulgence or an escape. You know for yourself how to live with your body and mind in a way that is skillful. These 8 precepts are guidelines. They're not burdensome rules that make you feel guilt-ridden if you don't live up to their highest standard. You're not expected to be perfect all at once. This is a way of training, a way of guiding yourself towards recognizing the conditions of your mind, towards recognizing resistance, laziness, indulgence, and the resentment of being restricted. You should want to see these things so that you can release yourself from the burdens of repression and indulgence and find the middle way. The initial training period lasts for 1 year, so I expect you to remain at least 1 year under the discipline and then decide whether you want to stay or not. This life is only valuable as long as you see its value. It's not a life of compulsion. It has to be voluntary, and the energy for it has to come from your own mind. You can't expect somebody else to enlighten you. This is a very mature way of living in which you're developing from your heart, developing the effort from your own mind, rather than just being conditioned into being Buddhists or monks. It's useless if you're just trying to rearrange your ways of life and thinking to become something else. That's not liberation. As an Anagarika now, you no longer have a lot of choices and decisions to make about what to do. Life here is much more one-pointed, so you have much more time to watch. We live here under these principles so that we trust each other. We're not here to compete with each other, to see who's going to become Anagarika of the year. That will be working from the wrong attitude. Instead, we learn to respect each other and have compassion for each other as human beings, so that we're not harsh or narrow-minded regarding individual problems, abilities, or lack of abilities. We can't all be the same, but we can respect our differences. Even though we live in a community of many people, we allow space for the mind. We forgive each other for the things we do wrong. Inevitably, living in a community with other beings means that there will be misunderstandings and conflicts, but we work with them and with ourselves, rather than trying to make the community into what we would like it to be. Learning how to forgive is a very important lesson for a human being, as many of the problems in the world arise because of a lack of forgiveness. Hundreds of years go by, but people still talk about what somebody did to their ancestors 200 years ago. But as religious mendicants, we don't have to spend our time complaining or criticizing members of the community. Instead, we learn how to let go of our particular views about them and give them space to develop. Each of us has to develop from the position of what we are, recognizing and realizing rather than becoming anything. So many useful principles in there. I'm not sure who was becoming an Anagarika on this occasion. Maybe they're still in the community, maybe not. This is from way back when, probably in the late 79 or 1980. That's that kind of period. But as he points out here, this also is a very oft-repeated theme of Luang Por Chah about the nature of Buddha Dhamma Sangha as a refuge, because this is kind of a cornerstone of Buddhist life, that whether you're in Thailand or Sri Lanka or Burma or in the northern Buddhist world, Tibet or China, the three refuges have this very, very central position, and it's very easy to think, and even in the chanting, as we recite the words of the chanting, it's easy to think just of the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha as the historical Buddha, Gautama Buddha, who lived 2,500 years ago, and the Dhamma teachings as the words that the Buddha spoke, and then the Sangha as it says in the chanting, the four pairs, the 8 kinds of noble beings, those who have awakened to the Dhamma as described and explained by the Buddha. But what makes a refuge, as he points out here, a refuge is a safe place. So that's a talking about an internal quality. It's like the safe place of your own attitude. So what in there within us is a safe place, what is reliable, what's always present, and what is always going to protect us. And so that, as he says here, recollect that a refuge is a place you go to for safety, and the refuge with the Buddha means refuge in wisdom. So, when we're developing vipassana, insight meditation, this is exactly what we're doing, is developing that refuge in Buddha, in that quality of awareness, so that whether the mind is being aware of something pleasant or something painful, something beautiful or ugly, whether it's something that is liked or disliked, there's that sense of the mind abiding in the knowing of that experience rather than identifying with it or getting caught up in liking or disliking. So that's the quality of refuge, is that sense of the mind. It can be open to what is pleasant, what is painful, what is beautiful, what is ugly, what is expected, what's unexpected. and there's a quality of security and stability. The mind can be open to the whatever is there within the flow of experience. Hence, it's a safe place. Even if you've got a broken leg or you've got a 3-day migraine, you can still be that quality of awareness, knowing that painful feeling. Or if somebody's ranting at you and attacking you and insulting you, you can still have that refuge in Buddha wisdom, that sense of being being the knowing of that, rather than getting caught up in defending yourself or trying to run away or attacking the other person back, or the usual reactive patterns that we follow. And so this is a very, very worthwhile, because we recite these words so often, Buddhaṃ Saranam Gacchāmi Likam. And as in many of these teachings, since I've been proofreading this whole book, it comes up over and over again. And how Luang Por Sumedho says, you could teach a parrot to recite Buddhaṃ Saranam Gacchāmi, but you can say the words, pronounce them quite correctly, but it's not a matter of just reciting the syllables, but as we recite the words, the point of it is to activate that attitude. So draw upon that attitude of being awake and being wise. And then refuge in Dhamma, as Dhamma means the way things are, the true nature of things. And so in a sense it's also helping us to step down from our habitual attitudes of how things could be, or they should be, or they might have been, or they might be. So letting go of our opinions about the way things are, or our judgments of like or dislike, but to in a sense let go of the habits of self-view and see things more in terms of nature, and that capacity to recognize, well, this is functioning according to the laws of cause and effect. Because of this cause, there's this effect. Because it's winter time, when you go outside, you feel cold. When you when you act in a certain way, some people are going to like it, some people are going to dislike it. When you say things, some people are going to be happy, some people are going to be unhappy, other people are going to be indifferent. That's the natural way of things. To expect everybody to approve of everything that you say, or to expect everybody to like you, is asking the world to be other than it can possibly be. Even someone who is as wise and enlightened and admirable as the Buddha had plenty of enemies, people who really disliked him and spent a lot of energy attacking him and criticizing him. So refuge in Dhamma is a kind of realism. It's just in a sense of learning, to use Luang Por Sumedho's phrase, learning how not to take our life personally, but to see our life as and our inner world, our external world, as all being attributes of nature, and following the laws and patterns of the natural order. Yeah, refuge in Sangha, I like to think of this as he points out here. He says, you can look at it as taking refuge in that in yourself which is virtuous, compassionate and good. So again, just as when you take refuge in Buddha as wisdom, as being awake, then regardless of what's experienced, there can be a quality of stability and security. Similarly, refuge in Dhamma, we can recognize, well, I didn't expect this, or I didn't particularly like this, but this is just the natural law following its own patterns. So that attitude is trustworthy. So similarly, when we reflect on the nature of Sangha and consider, well, how is that a refuge? And when you are ready to incline towards that in you which loves the good, that in you which is noble, then that's and I wouldn't suggest that I've got the sort of the monopoly on how to interpret this. People are welcome to reflect on this in your own ways, but to me it's also pointing to when you are in a way guided by that in you which loves the good. It doesn't mean only good things will happen to you. It doesn't mean that you'll always be healthy and you'll never get criticized or such. But when you when you incline to, or you trust, and you follow that in you which loves the good, then even if people criticize you or blame you, you'll be protected. You'll be in a way you have the capacity to be at ease, because your heart is not moving towards contention or negativity or divisiveness. That you are able to in a way not create the other, not to create a sense of contention between yourself and the world. So even though it's bad things might happen to you, it might be a car crash or people might be hurtful towards you, that you can free the heart from dwelling in aversion to that. And the sort of most extreme example that the Buddha uses is in the sutta called the simile of the saw, where he says, even if people are, if you've been kidnapped by bandits and they're cutting your arms and legs off with a two-handled saw, rather than feeling, he said, anyone, if you dwell in negativity towards those people who are chopping your arms and legs off in that way, then you are not following my teaching. So he sets the bar pretty high at that point. But he said, but if you are, he said, rather in that case you should, and this is where he you get the passages, I will abide, pervading one quarter with a heart imbued with loving kindness. That comes from this same sutta, the simile of the saw. Rather, as they're chopping your arms and legs off, rather you should extend these feelings of loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. Rather, we should be generating these attitudes of kindliness towards the people who are acting so horrendously towards us. So he's deliberately setting the bar very, very high, but it is helpful, because even though you are, say, in a difficult situation, or you're not glad about what they're doing, it's that in you which refuses to hate, that in you which refuses to say condemn or to reject, and say, this shouldn't be this way, and this is somehow outside of nature, outside of Dhamma. It's like recognizing, well, I'm not glad these people are doing these things, but these people are not worthy of being hated, and that more negativity is only going to make it worse. So that refuge in Sangha in this way is learning to trust in that in you which, say, refuses to hate or refuses to contend, which doesn't mean always being a doormat or just being passive, but refusing to dwell in aversion, like that in you which is able to, not contend against the way things are, and that in us which loves the good, and to see that and also to experiment with this and to see how when we do trust that and do follow that, to see how there is this quality of security, this quality of stability and ease that is there even in very difficult situations, that somehow there's a serenity, a stability, an ease within the heart. Then the Anagarika precepts, as they are laid out there, the teaching that I often like to quote in relationship to this is when there's a short sutta called the Uposatha Sutta, where the Buddha is describing how he conjured up the 8 precepts as a form for spiritual training. And I feel it's very, very helpful, because it can seem, when you look at the 8 precepts, don't do this, don't do that, and it's a lot of not doing. And it can seem like our freedom is somehow being inhibited or limited, and we've got to follow these rules to sort of fence us in and hold us down. But what the Buddha does in the Uposatha Sutta, he says, all their lives, from the time of their enlightenment, an arahant never deliberately takes the life of another creature. They would never wish to harm another living being. So wouldn't it be a good thing for the lay community, for one day a week on the lunar days, if they followed that same standard of not taking the life of other creatures? Then they will live as the arahants do, and that will be for their long-lasting welfare and happiness. So And then so too with the other precepts. All their lives from the time of their enlightenment, an arahant never takes what is not given, never steals anything, or doesn't engage in sexual activity, and they don't lie or use abusive speech. They don't use intoxicants. They only eat in one part of the day, or they don't incline towards using entertainments or distraction, adornments, and they choose to just sleep on a simple sleeping place. So what it's pointing to is that this is the natural inclination of the heart which is liberated. So if you are totally enlightened, it will be impossible for you to harm another being. It will be impossible to tell a lie. Your tongue couldn't form the words. If you are totally enlightened, it would be, you just wouldn't be interested in snacking all the time. You just relate to food like filling up your car at the petrol station. You wouldn't feel like you've got to keep pulling into another petrol station to add something, have another snack. It's not like, oh look, Shell, great. I'll have some of that. It's kind of ridiculous. But then we don't relate to food that way. Oh, well, that's interesting. Oh, I didn't have one of those. Let's try that. And so it's pointing to a kind of inner plenitude, an inner fullness, that and a simplicity, rather than a sort of a forbidding of all the sort of things that we might be interested in or like to do. So I feel it's helpful to regard it in that way, and to see that the life of the Anagarika, or the life of living here in the monastery, following the standards and values of the monastic community and the renunciant spirit, that what it's doing is helping us to tap into that which in us which is already completely self-sufficient, that in us which is totally non-violent, that in us which is completely uninterested in sexual activity, that in us which is not looking for distraction or entertainment or just something to carry our attention away. But it's helping us to open that door to in a way open that up our heart to that inner wholeness that's already here, but we miss it because we're pulled along by the habits of snacking and exaggerating and entertaining ourselves and so on. Also, his comment about the eighth precept about escaping through sleep. I don't know if it was actually after this talk was given by Lumpur, but I remember that one particular Anagarika commenting after Lumpur had given either this talk or a similar morning reflection about how the routine at Chithurst was designed to help encourage engagement and energetic involvement, and also that's the fact of the amount of work that was needed to be done was involved a lot of hours a day, both often working in the morning and through the afternoon as well. And so Lumpur had been talking about that in this way, and this particular Anagarika said, actually, if you really work at it, you can get 14 hours of sleep in a day. You have to be focused. You gotta really kind of keep on the ball. But just take it from me, 14 hours is doable. And he wasn't kind of tragicomically, he wasn't kidding. But as soon as the morning breakfast time meeting was finished, up for a quick 10-minute nap before the work period began at 8:30, and then anyway. So there are some themes. So if people have any particular questions or comments or things that you'd like to clarify, please ask away. Yeah.
These talks have been, do you read any of these and think hey, I was there for this one?
Yes, some of them. Yeah. One of them, one of the later ones, I actually transcribed. I remember it very, very well. One called "Realizing the Mind." Yeah, so some of them I was definitely there. I wasn't there in Hampstead. Funnily enough, I was living about a mile away from the Hampstead Vihara when they first went there. I was in Primrose Hill and they were on Haverstock Hill, just literally about a mile away. I had no idea they were there. I was still a hairy student at the time. But I didn't join the community in England until October of 79, so that Chithurst had been opened for about June, July, August, September, about 5 months when I arrived. So that earlier period, 77, 78, I wasn't around for that, but from the end of 79. Yes,
so,
Mac.
Strangely enough, I lived in the spot practically opposite the Vihara at that time. 118 Haverstock Hill.
All right.
I saw this. I knew there were Buddhist monks that already had walking up and down, but that was it. I never went in. Here I am now.
Yes, well, it's also Ajahn Sumedho took Ajahn Chah up to the top of Primrose Hill, and was showing him London from up there, and so I might have walked past them on the street. Yeah. But I wasn't quite ready for it then, I think. How does that sound to the Anagarikas? Because it was...
It doesn't sound like it's changed very much.
Not very much. No. Well, in a way, it hasn't really changed that much in 2,500 years. The human mind still works in pretty much the same. I mean, it's astonishing in many respects how the human condition really hasn't changed that much in a couple of millennia, and that the issues that you come across in terms of the way you relate to your possessions, your living space, the way you relate to other people, the things that are useful to learn about in terms of how to simplify your life, how the habits of seeking distraction, the objects have changed a little bit in a couple of thousand years, but the basic patterns haven't that much. And also just how the fundamental principles of say like the renunciate training, because also within the Anagarika precepts you have 4 of them are what are called natural precepts, and then 4 of them are called renunciant precepts. So like not eating in the evening is a renunciant precept. It's not immoral to have supper. There's no intrinsic bad karma to eat in the evening, but it's a way of simplifying your life. But it's quite marvelous how it just that simple way of pegging out these different areas where our mind gets carried away, sort of in terms of our the way we relate to property, on the things that belong to us or things that belong to other people, or that the way we relate to speech, and how the habits we have of deceiving or exaggerating and or seeking a distraction through intoxication or entertainment. I mean, nowadays we have iPhones and a vast range of different ways of distracting ourselves, but it's still pretty much the same. That to recognize that if you choose to not distract yourself in that way, it takes a bit of an effort to decline that opportunity. But when you do, then there's a quality of fullness that you discover, and that the capacity that we have just to set those or the usefulness of establishing those standards. Okay, I choose to live this way, and also I'm going to live with these other people who choose to live this way, because it's like a group training that, in a way, that the Buddha set up the way of life in a monastery and monastic training, and also the Uposita precepts, like for the training of the lay community, he realized this is tough to do on your own. It's very hard to make the best of your life if you're surrounded by people who are just living impulsively or just following their own fears and agitations and anxieties and desires. So it's much better if we kind of band together and help each other because the current is generally going to be towards what's not very skillful, not very helpful, not liberating. So creating a pattern of living, so there's like a group commitment, a communal recognition of those wholesome values, and then your own efforts of simplification help other people, and the efforts of others help you, and so then you prop yourself up so that you're all far more able to develop your own potentiality than if you were trying to do it on your own. So that and so that the commitment to the 8 precepts, whether it's as a year-long commitment or whether it's one day a week on the lunar days, or however one might hold it, it's also that part of that sense of a communal effort, and then how that standard, or that standard that you're keeping then is an inspiration or a support for others, and that others can see, oh yeah, that's a good thing. Oh yeah, I could do with more of that. Oh, that's a good idea. and then also how the efforts of others can help support us. But it's also, as he points out there, it's not about trying to become Anagarika of the year, even though we can get competitive like that. Well, Lumpur actually gave me a medal once. So, because I was kind of obsessively competitive. I didn't realize I was being competitive, but I was desperately trying to be the best monk ever. And I didn't see that what I was doing. I was always trying to sort of sit longer than everybody else, or sit up straighter, to be arriving for the work scene before everybody else, and working longer than everybody else, and always being the best at everything. And one day he actually gave me a medal. It was like a little medallion, but it was shaped like a medal, a little kind of bar on the top with a sort of dangling sort of Buddha head underneath it. And he said, "Here, this is for you, Venerable. You can have this Monk of the Week award, or monk. I think it was Monk of the Year award." And he was kind of joking, and I thought, "Oh, nice." But it was a teaching. But I didn't actually get it at the time. I just thought he was recognizing how wonderful I was. So it took me. I can be pretty thick sometimes with these things. So it sort of dawned on me after that. I would hear him talking about, it's not about being Anagarika of the month, or Monk of the Year, and then, oh right, maybe he's talking to me here. And so also in that like he was talking about with the bowing and chanting, that seeing how the mind reacts about, well, he should chant like I do, or that she's not bowing right, or they should do it like me, or I'm not going to do it like that. Who do they think I am? All those kind of habits of reacting, like I'm not going to bow. I came to Buddhism to get away from all that. And so, as he points out, it's not about bowing or not bowing. It's not about doing the chanting a certain way or not doing it, but it's how much we watch the mind and see that kind of self-righteousness or a sense of a sort of intimidation by others, or judging of others, and learning to see, oh look, that's a really judgmental reaction, or oh look at that, I'm really intimidated by how perfect that monk is doing it, or I'm getting all critical about, who does he think he is? Pah, so bloody straight. How can he pronounce the Pali so obnoxiously correctly? He's just doing it on purpose, I know. And to watch your mind making those kind of judgments, and because you can't just stop your mind from being judgmental or critical or make yourself do things better. But it's watching that whole process of judging and comparing, and then by seeing it and recognizing it, that's ridiculous. It's highly unlikely that Anagarika Anna is chanting that way just to intimidate me. I think she's probably just doing the best she can and cultivating a devotional heart. It's highly unlikely this is a vendetta on her part to make me feel bad. So that you're able to kind of laugh at your own foolishness and judgmentalism, kind of reactive patterns. Yeah, Michelle, you know.
It's interesting you're talking about the bowing. As I was, came to live here in my first experience of monastic life here, and I still now find it quite curious sometimes, and I really sort of underestimated how I can fluctuate with how I feel about doing that. Because I saw it as a very subservient thing when I first came here. Mm-hmm. I was watching everybody and going, what are they doing? How can I really? I didn't consider
as one does.
Yeah, I didn't consider it to be a really strong opinion. More of a kind of, I really couldn't understand what that was about at all. And for about 4 days, about November last year, I was sat in this sala and everyone was bowing and I was going completely bemused. And then it sort of dawned on me that it's not for anybody else, it's for yourself. Mm-hmm. And when that happened, I was really able to do it, and it was very beautiful. It made me feel very hot and very flustered, and I didn't have that sensation particularly. But I kind of understood something about it in a different way, but still, sort of months down the line, I can still find I can sit in a temple and just not be able to engage with it. And I find if I do it when I'm not genuine about it, if there's not the connection there, sometimes I was doing it thinking I will come, and it don't sometimes. it's very false, so that sort of chanting and bowing, I still sort of settling in it, have flashes of how very beautiful it can open you up and sort of make you feel,
Well, it's good just to watch that variety of different feelings around it.
Incredible. It's quite incredible. I never realised that those kind of things would come up, like grumpy or that. Somebody might give me a mild ticking off about something, or sort of, I've done something and perhaps I knew I shouldn't, I'm not going to do it, that kind of. And that's rare, but it is surprising that such a tiny little thing can create such a sort of, massive sort of knee-jerk kick against authority.
Yes.
Even there in the first place. It's really funny.
Well, and it holds up a mirror. A part of it is it holds up a mirror to those different feelings, and so you can notice, I'm feeling all sort of very serene and devotional, and then another time you think, did I just bow 3 times? Where was I? So preoccupied with something else that you don't even realize, how many times have I bowed? Have I bowed at all? What? Where am I? Which room am I in? And just so caught up in your own thoughts, or like, I'm not gonna bow. And just be able to see the variety of moods and feelings. It was also interesting hearing George Sharp, who was the one who invited Ajahn Sumedho and Ajahn Chah to come to England in the first place. And because Ajahn Sumedho had stopped off at the Vihara, and George had started off after there was no monks at the Vihara at all. Kapilawada, who had been a monk and had started a place, had disrobed, come back as a lay teacher. And George first met him just a few weeks before he died. So George had never really met a monk before Ajahn Sumedho showed up. Had never seen anybody bowing or chanting or anything like that. And so then, but he was very impressed by him as a teacher and thought, well, we've got to get this bloke here somehow. And when he went to Thailand and went to invite Ajahn Chah to come, So George is a pretty you probably met him. He's a very forthright kind of bloke, and he said to Ajahn Chah, "So, what's all this bowing stuff?" You know, in his very Georgian way. And Ajahn Chah's comment was, "Well, if you can't bend your body, how do you expect to be able to bend your mind?" Which I thought, fair enough. Okay, that's that's a point. That's a point. But it's also that, and this way Ajahn Chah would always encourage us to use it. It's not just a matter of just developing a reflex, or like Ajahn Sumedho said in that talk. It's not just conditioning ourselves to be Buddhists or just follow particular behaviors. That's not the point of it. The point is to use these forms to help watch the different mind states, and they're basically encouraging things that are wholesome. But it's also can be it's very instructive how you can be bowing to the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha while your mind is like, how dare she say that? Who does she think she is? I'm going to tell her. Hang on a minute. Am I actually bowing to the Triple Gem, or am I just believing in my particular grievance about somebody who just said something annoying to me? Where am I? What am I doing? And also part of our training as monastics is whenever you go into a room where there's a shrine, wherever you go in and whenever you arrive, whenever you leave, then you should bow 3 times. So going into your own dwelling, your kuti, then you bow 3 times when you arrive, bow 3 times before you leave. And Lumpur would always say, it's a way of just checking your mood, or checking that, which is sort of busy, and I'm on my way to something else, and I haven't got time to bow. I don't want to bother to bow. And he would point out it's a really handy way of looking at that in us, which doesn't want to bother or is on the way to something else. And
that's happened a lot with work. It's been quite busy.
Yeah, but it's a handy thing just to be able to say, okay, well, where do I think I'm going? What's so important that I haven't got 20 seconds to bow 3 times and just remember what we're here for in the first place? Yeah, exactly, and it helps to support that kind of collectedness, because we can get so wrapped up in the detail of some particular job of our lives here that you forget, why did I come in the gate in the first place? What's the whole point of this place? Yeah. It's not about answering this letter or getting to this meeting or building this thing or cooking this thing or talking to this person. It's about liberating the heart. Yes.
Could I? This chapter 5 on bowing and chanting. It was like fingers on a chalkboard for me. It was sort of, it brought me back to my early days in Zen. I refused to bow in a Zendo for 2 years.
Ooh, congratulations.
I just wouldn't do it, and of course I bow now with a tremendous amount of resistance. And I chant now with a tremendous amount of resistance. And I've been in, long retreats where it was bliss to bow and a sheer delight to chant. But like Michelle, my experience with it has been sort of very variable. And I think the thing that struck me is that grated in my mind in the piece was that I felt as if all of the space for actually raising the question, what's religious accretion, what's cultural accretion, and what is really the essence, and what could be done without. I think that's maybe a kind of a legitimate question for us to have as we pursue how best to develop our spiritual life and the path. So I think everything that's been said is right. I mean, these practices, these rituals, these bowing, it can be a very useful mirror. I found it to be a very useful mirror. At the same time, I wonder, for example, is it useful for people to come and see it and run away? So I think for me at least, the question is maybe bigger than just. I feel like it's almost like a Freudian response, right? If you have resistance, then you must have a pathology.
Right? Let's talk about this. Please lie down on the couch.
Yeah, if you're resistant, then there's something wrong with you. Whereas I think in the history of the development of Buddhism, there have been things that haven't been that wholesome, that haven't been that useful, and it seems like the piece doesn't give us any room to sort of acknowledge that, and that's my thought.
Well, it's good. Yeah, it's a very short piece,
yes,
but also that's why I also the context of it being in the first few months after they arrived, and there was also a lot of that. We don't want any of that Asian kind of accretion. We just want the pure Dhamma, and that sure the Buddha never did this, and so I think it was because of they've invited us here. This is what we do. This is our kind of forms and customs and style. So let's just, if we're going to be here, let's try and create a bit of an interface whereby people can see what it is that we're doing and have a bit of a sense of why we do it and how we do it and how to work with it. So that, I think, is sort of the context of that particular statement. It's not saying there's no room for reflection or different perspectives, but in those early days of the Vihara where people, I'm not sure about this. Okay, I think that's enough for today. Annamayang dhammagata sadhukarang dadamase sadhu sadhu